Welcome. Welcome to Oracle Squad. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Today is March 29th, 2009. Sunday morning. Well, I guess it could be Saturday night, depending where you're listening from. And we should have quite the show for you. We're going to have Josh Reeves coming on after this segment. He just needs to take a little break after doing the 2-hour show. A fine broadcast by Josh, as always. And he's going to be coming back on. We're going to get a little bit more deeper into some of the subject material. And hopefully we'll have some of our guests joining us as well. I know Freeman was on the fence. So, Freeman, if you're listening to this, we'd love to have you on to find out what's going on in the world of Freeman. And we might have some of our Oracle Broadcasting hosts on as well. But this is a short segment. And just wanted to briefly go over a few things that came out today in terms of news. I didn't really get a chance to do much news hounding. Of course, you had that fiasco with the We Are Change incident that Josh covered pretty well. I guess they arrested some We Are Change members trying to confront Bloomberg. Very interesting stuff there. Some of the headlines up on roguegovernment.com, which is my website. You can check it out. Some of the headlines include European protesters march in G20 rallies. A lot of people up in arms about what's happening with G20, and rightfully so. I mean, these people are just getting together to try to figure out a way to implement their new global currency. New York income tax rise hinted. And it's bad enough that we get taxed as is with all these different taxes. And now in New York, they're looking at raising the income tax. But this is the same guy, Governor David Patterson. This guy was talking about 88 separate new taxes. And that was a news story that came out a few months ago, which was just a total debacle right there. What else do we have here? Double-digit unemployment hits 7 states. That's another article that came out today. And it's actually much worse than that. Really, if you look at the unemployment, it's probably closer to 15 to 20% if you actually use figures and calculations that the government used to use in calculating unemployment. Now they understate all the figures. So it's pretty bad, but the figures that they come out with, well, they're actually understating how bad it is. So interesting stuff there. I guess the Bilderberg meeting, according to Mr. Jim Tucker, is going to be in Greece. No confirmation on that. That's just him reporting this. Of course, the Bilderberg group being that secretive group that meets every year, 100 to 150 of these elites from both Europe and in North America. They all meet together and they try to come up with a plan for what they're going to do in the near future. And what we saw with the Chantilly, Virginia Bilderberg meeting back in 2008, we've seen a lot of those people who attended that meeting, they ended up being involved in the Barack insane Obama administration. So that's just some of the news that came out today. Don't really have a whole lot of news I wanted to get into, but there's a whole lot of stuff that I cover throughout the week on my show. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Lee Rogers. I do the radio show Live For Your Die Radio from Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time on this network. So there you go. RogueGovernment.com is the website. Check it out for all the latest news and information. Also check out Doug Owen and Michael Vale's website, blacklistednews.com. Got a lot of great news over there as well. But anyway, I think we're heading up against a break in the next minute or so. And after the break, we hope to have Josh Reeves on. We'll see who else we can try to bring on. Try to get a mishmash of various Oracle Broadcasting hosts to come on and give their 2 cents on what's happening with all the insanity. Anyway, folks, we got a break. We'll be right back. Oracle Squad. Stay with us, folks. Gentlemen, welcome back to Oracle Squad. Thanks for tuning to the show. And joining me in this segment is Josh Reeves, the host of the Global Reality Show. Josh, how's it going?
It's going great, Lee. Thanks for having me on, and we're going to get into some stuff tonight and talk. I don't know who else is going to join us tonight, but we'll definitely talk it up, and we always have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, geez, where do you want to begin? There's just so much to talk about. We could talk about this Rockwall thing that you were getting into. That's a very interesting subject, undoubtedly. You know, this big rock wall thing that's pretty much located in your neck of the woods. I mean, to think that this archaeological site could actually maintain some stuff that could predate everything we know in the Bible and all these ancient texts. And we're talking about maybe 20,000, 30,000, or even 80,000 years old. And it's just kind of funny how this whole deal with the archaeological community, how nobody has really investigated this thing. I think there's some people who are putting a lot of pressure on on certain people to not investigate this particular archaeological site.
Oh, there's no question, and that's got to be, you know, one of the main aspects to think about and talk about why they're doing this is because, you know, if this is what we think it is, what we believe it to be, then this is going to shock and rock the foundations of religion, of government, of everything else, because it totally, you know, disproves this story about how long humans have existed, how long they've existed on this earth, and you know they would no longer be able to keep people in that box through religion. So, and I just put a link to a PDF there, Lee, in your little Skype box. If you want to look down, if you'll scroll down just a bit to about the middle of it, I think it says page 4 on the top of the PDF thing. There's actually a picture in the middle of it right there, Lee, where you can see what the giant skull looks like that they found.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to see if I can load that up because that sounds very interesting.
I want to send that to you because I knew that you and I talked about this the other night. And that's the whole thing here. When I was reading that Rockwall newspaper report earlier from 1886, and I'd read that before, Lee, and I'd never noticed that they said that it had 2 black polished marble pillars inside of it. Now, you earlier in the chat room during my show had mentioned, suggested somebody who was asking questions, you know, about, well, we were on a different subject then, but we were talking about, you know, the occultic history in the New Atlantis and whatnot pertaining to the United States of America. And you and I both have read Melly P. Hall's Secret Destiny of America. Do you remember that part in there, Lee, where they talk about, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. I'm just going from memory here. It was a guy, I think it was a guy in Rome that essentially was going against the whole thing where they would take people's land. They would basically rent it to them. Then if they couldn't pay the high taxes, they got their land taken away. And this guy was fighting against it. They took him down underneath these caves, like in Africa, and showed him the 2 black pillars. And these 2 black pillars allegedly went back to Atlantis, and it had the power to either enslave humanity or to free them. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. And I think this has been in lots of different civilizations. The idea of course, you know, the 2 pillars of Jacqueline and Boaz from the Masonic lore. But, you know, these 2 black pillars underneath the ground that these, you know, local farmers found in 1886. Where is that? It's there somewhere still, Lee, to this day. It's buried. John Lindsay told me that there was, he's read reports of a cave, of another cave where supposedly there's more bones located at, more hieroglyphs located at. And it's sitting, this big cave. I mean, I could take and show it to you right now. This big dome. It's a big, huge, gigantic dome on a big hill you have to drive up, and you drive over this thing in Rockwall, Texas, and supposedly into that cavern, it's a big, a dome room, basically a big temple room, is what John Lindsay, the architect and guy who did the original dig, referred to it as. And who knows what's in there? I mean, there may be
giants.
Giants. There could be bodies in there. There could be artifacts. We just don't know. But, you know, the only way you would ever find out, really, is to dismantle the entire town of Rockwall, Texas, and dig underneath the ground of these structures. But guess what? It's the richest town in the richest town in the richest county in the whole state of Texas. So good luck on that.
Well, I'm sure you got all these people who are in these secret societies that are flocking to this place because it's of great interest to these people. You know, I mean, it seems like these secret societies, they're really into this type of thing, especially ancient history, the secret history that me and you are not supposed to know about and are only reserved for the elites. And I think that's why you see all these people flocking to this area, because it is of important, I should say, a great amount of importance. And also the fact that you mentioned all these UFO sightings and Dallas. You know, I mean, you see all these different pyramid structures and all these different iconographies and emblems and things that you see right on the open. It's definitely very strange, Josh.
Well, it certainly is, Lee, and I'm told that Freeman is ready for us to patch him in. If you'd like to add him into the conversation, Lee, go right ahead.
Oh, excellent. Outstanding. All right, let's see if we can bring Freeman up.
You go ahead and patch him in, but yeah, and I'll continue while you're doing that. But you're exactly right. You know, this city is replete. Dallas is replete with Masonic iconography. I know Freeman was just in Dallas about a week ago. He was here taking pictures and whatnot. He put them on his MySpace. But, you know, people forget that Dealey Plaza was the first site of the first ever Masonic Lodge in the whole state of Texas. And when you go down there, right in front of the obelisk, there's these various, plaques. And there's a plaque about the founders of Dallas. And around the plaque of this, the founders of Dallas, there's these fleur-de-lis, which has always been a symbol of the Illuminati and of the Merovingian bloodline and the rest of it. So it's almost in their way of saying, look, this was our people. This was who set up and established this town. So when you think about that, and you think about that symbology being there, Lee, about, okay, it's us. This was our bloodline. Of course, the Merovingians that set up this town. Then you think about that in terms of these alleged, ancient stuff that's been found here. And of course, this weird video, this World of Lies video, and I've never found any more information on this, where this lady says in this video that when they dug the sewers system in Dallas, Texas, they found laser-etched tunnels underneath the town. I mean, between that and this Rockwall thing and all the rest of this, I mean, what are we supposed to think?
Yeah, obviously, this really just blows the whole official story about, where we came from and our distant past. And that's one of the things I think the elites have really tried to keep from us is our distant past. I mean, they don't want us to know, okay, you got history dating back to Samaria, and that's about all they want us to know. They don't want us to know anything prior to that. I think there's a real conspiracy to try to keep this information from people because it'll just blow all their phony paradigms out of the water.
Yep, and that's exactly what it is. And, of course, with this being us being right here in the heart of the Bible Belt, I mean, we've got Southern Baptists, we've got Catholics, Masons crawling all over the place. We've got, government, employees and everything else, the military-industrial complex. I mean, I'm starting to think there's a reason why all these big government officials moved here, not just because of its occultic background, but to be able to sit on this place and keep anybody from getting too close to it.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting nonetheless, because you'd think that there'd be a lot of people that would be just tearing apart this site to try to find out the truth about what's really going on. But anyway, we're up against our break. On the other side, we'll try to patch through Freeman, and we'll continue this edition of the Oracle Unplugged Roundtable. Stay with us, everybody. All right, welcome back to Oracle Unplugged. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm joined here with John Reeves, and we also have Freeman joining us. Freeman, how are you doing today?
Doing all right, and I'm feeling a little bit of chemtrail sickness, but I'm hanging tough.
Oh, that's good. So what's going on in the world of Freeman?
Let's see. Well, I went and visited King Tut's display at Dallas. You might as well call it the origins of the Hyksos Kings. It was really more of a display of Akhenaten and Queen Ti, more than anything from King Tut. Actually, mostly very interesting stuff. I'm looking at the sarcophagus and seeing depictions of the serpent people seemingly coming through magnetic wave barriers, and this leading to the Mot, or the symbol of the feather, which is your spirit in space, and leading down to humans. So it had this whole serpentine transmission into human scenario on Queen T's sarcophagus cover. And then we found this other little display that had, they say it was for a statue. It was a little miniature, say for a 12-inch tall person, platform inside with the foot placement. And the whole thing was covered in gold, and the symbolism on the side was them pouring this golden mixture into bowls and drinking it. And the entire ceiling of this small little crater, or small little crate type golden crate, had all of the vulture symbolism up on top, which was an ancient symbol of the Nephilim, or the Watchers. But it seemed to me, and I don't know if you guys are aware of the story of the little mummified man that was found in a gold mine as they were doing some excavations. This was actually in those Time Life books, the weird and mysterious. And right. There was a small mummified 12-inch man found there sitting in the lotus position inside of a rock, which had been basically hollowed out, but the rock was solid, and he was sitting inside of it, mummified in a lotus position. But so I'm looking at this picture and I'm seeing what I'm thinking about as monoatomic gold and maybe even Alice in Wonderland. One makes you bigger, one makes you smaller. I don't know. We're looking at 18-foot people, and we're also looking at these munchkins, these little teeny 12-inch people. Both have ran throughout time. You have the history of all of those. But so very interesting things at the King Tut, except for a whole lot of King Tut stuff.
Yeah, well, Freeman, it's kind of interesting. I wonder if this whole thing is kind of where fairies came from. Just a thought.
Sure, yeah. The ancient stories, and the fairies would make you forget. You'd go into fairyland and then you didn't recall. I mean, it's very much like the UFO stories of today. Even the flashy thing from Men in Black, that's in the Golden Bow, a story on ancient mythology, or not a story, but a book, encyclopedia of ancient mythology. It discusses the Golden Bow, and it's basically the flashy thingy.
To make you forget, and
yeah.
So
exactly.
all the stuff you saw with the aliens, that didn't exist. Yeah. So
a lot of this stuff goes way back.
It's very fascinating. Hey, Josh, any thoughts on this whole subject?
Well, it's interesting. I haven't had a chance to go check out the display yet, even though it's right here in my own backyard. But I was planning on going because I thought it was. I just lost track of time. I thought it was next month in April. This guy's Zawas. I think his name is.
He was there with Laura, or at the same time with Laura Bush, while we were just before we got there. Zahi.
Well,
Hawass.
Yeah, he was giving a speech here at SMU, and I'd plan on going and covering it. And I thought it was next month, lost track of time, and it actually happened. But my friend Delphi, her parents went, and they were in attendance. And yes, what's funny about that, Freeman, about what you said about Laura Bush, George and Laura Bush both were there at the presentation. And of course, SMU's right down the street from where Bush now lives, but allegedly lives. But no, it's interesting that that they would be there. That's two incidents of them being around this guy. Obviously, they have a vested interest in this type of information as well, Freeman.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got it straight from the horse's mouth, so I know for a fact that they were there. And this whole concept of what we're looking at here with this display is absolutely the rise of the Hyksos kings, the takeover of this religion, and the whole study that we've all been uncovering was it's all glorified right there at this supposed King Tut exhibition. There's no King Tut there, I'm telling you, but absolutely having them involved is a very curious feature in this whole story. Sorry, I lost my train of thought on where I was going to go with the whole Bush connection there.
Well, yeah, I just thought it was interesting because who all again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about King Tut's missing penis, actually. So I had announced my going. I'm going on the mystery of King Tut's penis because his penis seemed to have vanished during World War II. And I was like, maybe some Nazis took the King Tut's penis and therefore were using it to create Barakanan or something. But and then Zahi Hawass came out, though, and said he had found King Tut's penis, that it was there the whole time. He used computed tomography to scan and found the penis, the missing. So I don't know. Zahi, he still stands by the whole 3500 BC story and the rocks and twigs putting the boulders together. He's a tool.
He's a gatekeeper. He's most definitely one of these bloodlines. If you see his relationship, I mean, this guy has been deemed gatekeeper number one for all the Egyptian treasuries. Anytime they need an expert, they have to go get him. And yeah, exactly, he's a gatekeeper extraordinaire.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have him in my harp video, though, announcing the subterranean chambers under the Giza Plateau. That's when they found Osiris's tomb. Come on. What's going on here?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Hey, Freeman, before you came on, we were talking about Rockwall. And I was wondering, what's your thoughts on the whole Rockwall archaeological site? What do you think is actually there?
Well, I had just recently heard about it. I had no idea. I should have known Josh was up on all of that, but it's a new one to me. And so I was going to go investigate it, but our time didn't allow it. and I probably wouldn't have found anything. I knew that as well. But it is a very curious anomalous feature, and the idea of it connecting with the 33rd parallel and all of the UFO activity. I mean, Josh pretty much covered it, and that really is the same story for almost every one of these type of ritual sites. And you know, I think this might correlate with my story of Ogden, Utah. Definitely.
Well, Freeman,
big.
Tell us, and I can't remember this, and every time I try to tell people this, I bastardize up your research. Tell us what Dallas means in Hebrew.
Okay, Dallas in Hebrew is the letter D, and it means door. It is the tarot card of the high priestess, and so is the gateway. So that's really what it is. Dallas is door. It's I'm trying to think of all the correlations to the tarot. My brain's not quite up to par right now.
Yeah, but it makes sense. You got all those UFO sightings, and you have Dallas meaning gateway, meaning a gateway to the stars. It's kind of an interesting correlation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, I mean, I don't know one person growing up, myself included, who didn't grow up seeing strange stuff. And it was funny. A couple of weeks ago, I actually saw where a few months back there was actually a report filed with MUFON of a mass UFO sighting not 3 miles from where I live, and just a small town between where I live now and where I grew up when I was in high school. So apparently from this MUFON report, there's still sightings going out there in that same area on the perimeter where that wall is to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be the age of UFOs. You know, I was wondering why they used Bruce Springsteen on the whole Super Bowl ceremony, right? I mean, the worst that got was him rolling his crotch into the camera. Definitely I didn't see any, covert messages coming like you did with Prince or with Madonna and Britney and all. But there were a lot of UFOs over his concert at the Obama rally at Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
Hey, Freeman, we got break, but
Gotcha.
On the other side, I guess we'll pick up with where we left off. All right, guys, listen to Oracle Unplugged. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Oracle Unplugged. And I'm joined here with Josh Reeves from the Global Reality Show and Freeman from the Free Zone. And Freeman, you were talking about the Super Bowl, Bruce Springsteen, and some other interesting stuff. So I just wanted to give you a chance to finish up where you left off before the break.
All right. Well, it's looking at how they're going to present this subject to us. The UFO study is coming to the forefront. Hillary's making behind-the-scene moves for disclosure. This is something that's in the plan. And I find it so curious how it works out with, like, Fife Symington when he was governor of Arizona and the Phoenix Lights happened. And he brought out his assistant dressed as a gray and laughed the mayor off the stage, saying, "Oh, yeah, we got the culprit." And they all laughed. And then now he comes out and he says, "Oh, if you had seen that thing, you'd know it was otherworldly." They're getting this agenda ready, but at the time they weren't ready, and they still had to scoff at UFOs and research, and it's all just tooled. It's all manufactured in a way, the concepts of how we look at it. So I don't know. I was just looking into, I was waiting to see what sort of ritual they might pull off on the Super Bowl, and the only connection I could come up with Bruce Springsteen was all the UFOs over his concert at the Obama rally. That's the next thing you would end up pulling up, and so they're getting it into the consciousness of mankind.
Yeah, definitely. I know this is something me and Josh talk a lot about on our shows, but the fact that you see all this conditioning about extraterrestrials and UFOs on TV now. I mean, Larry King's talking about the History Channel. It seems like every time I tune on the History Channel, it's either something on UFOs or ancient astronauts. And then you got the Vatican coming out saying it's okay to believe in extraterrestrials. I mean, this is a very strange thing.
Yeah. It's it's going to be interesting times. That day really upset me. I guess that's why it sticks in my mind so much because, here was a government official coming out saying, yes, we have caught the culprit. We are going to now explore and explain to you what's going on. And then to have him bring the gray out. I mean, I was watching that and that was my moment when I thought, oh, here it is. Here's that day when they actually tell us and make it all real for everyone. And yet, then they just laughed.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting. There's also now a press conference that took place, I think, in Colorado, in which they claim to have this footage of a real-life space alien. And then they show it, and it's this gray that is appears in this window. It almost looks like a puppet, and it goes away, and they're selling it like it was this real alien footage. And, hey, maybe it was. I don't know, but it just seemed kind of strange.
I think I have that footage in my Nephilim film.
Yes.
Nephilim show, yeah.
That's crazy stuff.
It definitely is.
Yeah, there's been several of those that have come out like that where they say, oh, yeah, we've got a body. But, I want to go back and I want to touch on that, on the thing that Freeman was talking about with the Super Bowl and Bruce Springsteen, et cetera. My only connection I was making with that was, possibly some sort of bloodline relation. We know a lot of these people in the music industry and the movie industry, are all related to people who were presidents, heads of state, former rulers, former dictators, former heads of Rome and Ramses II and all this stuff. So my connection was there. Well, if there's anything to these bloodline connections and anything to what Freeman's talked about, because I think this Barry Cerrito guy was some guy that they crossbred or genetically manipulated along with Akhenaten with the information Freeman's put out. I mean, maybe that's who this Barry Cerrito guy is. I mean, who knows?
Like a hybrid, possibly.
Yeah.
That's certainly a possibility. He might be the result of some strange CIA experiment.
Yeah, and the thing with that is, it was one thing if it was just Barack, but it's the whole family. I mean, that's when it just blows your mind. Yeah.
Well, Freeman, what sort of feedback have you get on that story? Because I've been talking a lot about that on my show, and I think there's a lot of credibility with the reporting that you've done on this. And I know people who are just coming into this information probably think this is insane that we're talking about how Barack Obama might be some sort of genetically altered human being or some sort of clone. But
not the kids, boys and girls, no.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the information and use a little bit of common sense, there's definitely something very odd going on here.
There absolutely is. And, I had a few people write me back and go, just take me off your damn mailing list. You're COINTELPRO. And I'm like, that's just funny. All right, you're off the list, no worries. But mostly people are just wondering. They're left with, and that's why I try to present things in such a way that where you just wonder. I don't want to say one's right or another. I don't know. But the whole thing, the whole story, which you can't really get just out of the article, but if you've been listening to the Free Zone the whole time, the whole thing is that I had started talking about green fireballs and meteors and asteroids, and coupling this with NASA and the DoD, and how this was the next step, the next plank in this takeover. And then, I started getting into the idea that Barack looks like Akhenaten. Somebody suggested it, and then somebody else suggested Queen T and Michelle. And so I put these together, and I started going, wow, this is just crazy, and then I found the two girls. And so I put that all together, and I start writing the article about Barack Akhenaten, and then the meteor comes in, and it comes from the group of near-Earth asteroids known as the Aten, and the one that they think is going to destroy the planet is known as Apophis, which is the Satan of Akhenaten's cult of Aten. And I'm like, this is too much, And then just to put the cherry on top, Barack comes out and says, "I will not stand for human cloning. It's an abomination." What? How does this happen?
It's so strange. It's so strange. Another thing that Josh brought up to my attention this week is that this is just crazy. But I tried this out myself on my computer, and it's absolutely true. If you record "Yes, we can," Obama. Okay, I'm sure you've heard this.
I have it linked to the article. If you want to find it, it's on it's on freemanperspective.blogspot.com. I've got it linked up there.
Okay, yeah. Well, essentially, for those of you out there that are not familiar with this, essentially, if you say "Yes, we can" and you play it backwards, it says "Thank you, Satan." I mean, it's just completely
clear
insane.
As a bell. Clear
It's
as a
insane.
bell. There's no doubt about it. It is insane. And then you hear the crowds, they're all cheering it back, and it's "Thank you, Satan." Thank you, Satan.
I mean, it's like a big joke. I mean, Josh, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Oh, did we lose Josh?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. No, I was. You went back to me too quick. I was going to say, okay, they're going to talk, and as they're talking here, I'm going to cue the audio. But so I'll preface with that. Now, listen, I'll play some audio from this. Listen to this. This is audio, folks. You can hear me say it once, and then it'll. Yes, you can. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties there, but no, there was me saying it backwards. That was actually once you played it backwards, that's what it said. And let's see what this one is. I think I've got the other one here.
This is fascinating stuff. This is definitely
yeah, and it definitely is. But here's one that's even more interesting. Let me see if I can cue this one up.
Well, while you're doing that, let me know. I'll add in a little bit. Okay, so Barak in Hebrew means lightning, so everyone is correlating lightning with the fall of Satan. Lightning. Barak is the Hebrew word used in that, and Satan fell, like lightning.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. And on top of that is the correlation with Mabus, and the idea that Nostradamus wrote of Mabus bringing in the Antichrist. Are you guys getting me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. I guess we're just waiting to see if Josh gets the clip loaded up.
Right.
Josh, how's that going? Oh, my goodness. There it is.
That's the crowd at the New Hampshire rally backwards saying, thank you, Satan.
Yeah, what are you going to say about that? Definitely has a curious. It sounds like thank you, Satan.
Well, my thing is, Freeman, is that, one can argue whether, Barack Obama has any knowledge of this. I say probably most likely he does not. But here's the thing. The people that control him sure do.
Right. And let's continue it with the whole Nostradamus prophecy. It says Mabus will soon die, and there will come of the people and beast a horrible rout. Then suddenly one will see vengeance, hundreds hands thirst hunger when the comet will run. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, we're up against a break, everybody. This is definitely some fascinating information. So we'll pick up on this where we left off after the break. And folks, you're listening to Oracle Unplugged right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. OracleBroadcasting.com is the website. And we will be right back after these messages. Stay with us, everybody. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Oracle Unplugged. I'm joined here with Josh Reeves, host of the Global Reality Show, and Freeman, the host of the Free Zone right here in the Oracle Broadcasting Network. And Freeman, you're talking about Nostradamus, Mabus, and all these different correlations. Very fascinating stuff. So please continue.
Well, there were some people who were putting together already his 666 character, so I followed it around just to see what was going on. And so what happened is they've been using this Nostradamus prediction, this quatrain that says Mabus will then soon die, and the people and the beast a horrible rout, and then suddenly one will see vengeance, hundreds hands thirst hunger when the comet will run. And they believe that this is an explanation of the coming of the Antichrist that will follow Mabus. And what's interesting is that just 2 weeks after Obama was elected, there was a massive comet that came in and heralded Obama's election. And then now he is putting forth to make defense industry publications inside the Navy are reporting that Ray Mabus, a Navy veteran and former Mississippi governor, who, if you look at my pictures of I have this Kabbalistic town in Jackson, Mississippi. I dedicated a whole section of my pictures just to that town because of all the Kabbalistic architecture. But this governor gave a speech for Barack in those buildings that I have these pictures of. But this former governor of Mississippi is going to become the Navy Secretary in the Obama administration. Okay, so Mabus has taken over the Navy, and that's the ones, who run HARP, who run the secret sub programs, who run all of the really a lot of the high tech deep black ops stuff goes through the Navy. So now we have a Mabus in there with the comment and everything else fulfilling the Antichrist prophecy, according to some.
It's very interesting stuff. We live in a crazy world, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We have a caller. Let's go to the caller real quick. We've got Joe in California. Joe, how you doing, sir?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I actually, thanks for your show. I really, really appreciate it. I've been listening for a long time. And I wanted to call, I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, I guess Delphi was on the radio with Josh, and she was talking about that archaeological discovery and talked about the Nephilim and these dwarfs. Well, I just wanted to, one of the reasons I'm calling is to validate a lot of what Freeman's talking about. I'll try to tell this as fast as I can. Back in 1993, up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, it was a party at my place up there on a Saturday. A bunch of people came over. Long story short, party ended. A few of my friends rode their bikes over. One of them didn't want to ride back, so we stayed the night. And I said, just take my room, I'll take the living room. And this is up in a cabin up in the Santa Cruz Hills. 3 o'clock in the morning on the nose, because I had a digital clock in the living room, and I also had this heater stove in the corner of the living room that heated the cabin. 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a slam, boom, bang, 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 and I get up about a quarter way off of the couch, and I look, and I see this little guy with a top hat on and a buckle, a little silver buckle. He couldn't been any taller than 2.5 feet. Now, I was realized as I'm looking at him, and my heart's kind of pounding out of my chest, and I'm thinking, this is a pretty gnarly nightmare. And so evidently I fell back to sleep, and I kind of got up that morning, and I chalked it up as a dream. And my buddy gets up, and I'm making coffee, right? And he says, did you see that little sucker? So and since then I've heard numerous stories about them, and I've come to find out they were also used in mining. I've heard a few people talk about seeing them up in Humboldt County in the Tommy Knockers. And there's a lot of things that happen up in those mountains. There's an area up in a place called Henry Cal where the Druids used to hold, major ceremonies, and it was almost like a commune that they lived in. And I mean, up in that area, I didn't know what the experiences were when I was living up in that area, but the only thing I can say is that a couple times it felt like some kind of alien downloads of seeing these hieroglyphs on computer screens in a sleep state. I mean, highly colorful, highly technological downloads. Seeing in my eyes. So some heavy duty stuff. Happening there, and why some people see it and some people don't, I don't know. But I can tell you, you're probably closer to the center of what's really going on with this global charade than probably anybody else. So I just wanted to add that, and I really appreciate you being there, Josh.
All right. Well,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, hey, Joe, thanks for the phone call, and let Josh comment on this. Josh, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I haven't done a whole lot of research into that topic, but I've heard of it, and I think Freeman certainly has as well. But there has been talk of these. Who knows what they are? There are a lot of people speculate they're genetically engineered, but there is a lot of talk of these dwarves and these various things that have been used, and a lot of that does tie into the Greys. A lot of people believe that the Greys are actually genetically created worker race created by the Anunnaki. Now, whether that's true or not. It certainly does factor into a lot of the stories about how they seem to be, fairly, non-emotional and have the ability to be able to communicate telepathically. And another one of the interesting things about them as well, and I talked about this earlier in the week with some other information, it seems they have the ability to be able to fold different dimensions and to be able to operate in different dimensions. And that could be definitely to the you could definitely attribute that to 12-strand DNA activation or something where they're able to manipulate various realms of reality. Because a lot of these stories, people have these dreams where they're out of their body when this thing is happening. They're existing, but they never really left their house. But they may have physical ailments on their body. They may wake up and have bruises. It's happened to me before. I mean, I've woke up and had bruises all over my leg. It was like somebody beat me with a baseball bat. How do you explain that? So I think that's very interesting that when you start looking at these in terms of maybe a genetically engineered race, you do see the possibilities that they're some sort of advanced version of us.
That's
Freeman, what do you think?
Well, another suggestion on the level of like seeing leprechaun type, there is something known in abductions as cover memories. And I personally have a couple of these of my own. I don't know if I've been abducted all my life. I know that they follow generations, they follow families. My dad chased aliens, so I am a prime candidate. But I definitely have what I know are seeming cover memories. One that stands out for me when I took out the trash as a young boy, probably about 6 or 7, and I had become a dancing bear. I had a big bear head on my shoulders and a top hat and a cane and everything. And then when I went back inside, I couldn't figure out what had happened there. What was that in my head? Or, if that was real, I just couldn't tell. But my body could tell that a lot of time had passed. And, so there's a thing known as cover memories. And sometimes when you're abducted, they plant these silly scenarios in your head so that they sound insane.
Well, yeah, it almost sounds like Joe was describing a leprechaun. I know some people in the chat room have mentioned that. I mean, what do you guys think? You think this is like some sort of alien race, these leprechauns? Or, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but, you never know.
Yeah, there's been talk of people have talked about seeing these little blue dwarves on some abduction scenarios. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. There was a whole YouTube thing. I don't know if it was real or not, but all these people sitting back going, I saw it. There was a leprechaun. And I don't know.
Well, the other thing I was going to say as well is that, no, I know this is for a fact. In fact, I have a couple of scenarios. Like I had a dream when I was about 6 years old that me and my grandfather, my grandmother still remembers this. I was about 6 years old. I had a dream that he and I were in a trailer, and we had shotguns, and we were barreling the door down, and there were craft outside that had landed, and there were aliens that were coming and basically invading. I had this dream when I was 6 years old, and I just never left my mind and think about, did it have some kind of different meaning to it? And then, of course, if you read Rick Strassman's book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, where he did the first DEA-approved test with a hallucinogenic drug, in dimethyltryptamine, which is secreted by the pineal gland, one of the things that they all came back with during these dimethyltryptamine sessions was stories of extraterrestrials. And one lady, in fact, had suffered from, I think she'd been raped when she was younger. She'd had these problems. Well, and she was scared of clowns. And in her scenario, when she went under the dimethyltryptamine, she came back and she had seen clowns that had visited her, and they basically basically fixed all these problems that had plagued her whole life when she came out of this dimethyltryptamine trip. So it definitely sounds like that was the same kind of case where they basically disguise them here. A lot of weird scenarios, but let's talk more about this, what the idea of these aliens might be, and the rest of it on the other side of the break here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting topic of conversation. I didn't think we'd be talking about leprechauns and dwarfs, but hey, I mean, anything goes. Anything goes in this network. So, hey, folks, we'll be right back, and we'll finish up the conversation on the other side with Josh Reeves and Freeman. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to Oracle Unplugged, second hour of the broadcast. And Freeman had to jet, but we have Josh Reeves with us, so we're going to continue the conversation. And we're talking about all sorts of crazy stuff in the prior segment. So, Josh, I just want to let you finish up where you left off.
Well, yeah, most definitely. Here's the thing about this stuff is that, as we were talking about in the last segment, and I talked about this week on my show as well, is that what we start to understand, and as you go deeper down the rabbit hole of this information, and every time you do research, you end up going farther down. I mean, it happens to you and I, Lee, you know, every week. I mean, every week there's something we're finding or coming across that is some next level beyond the insanity we thought we could already comprehend. I mean, every week there's new stuff that comes out. And what you start to find out is, you know, people, when you're going doing the research and you're going back, you end up, see, that's what led me down a lot of this stuff when I was researching for the new film was, you know, I wanted to know where the origins of this stuff came from, how far it went back, you know, who they were involved in. And my God, when you start finding out that this stuff goes back to all the way to ancient Rome and before, back to the original civilizations, and how you've had this priest class has been ruling on high for, you know, since the dawn of man on this planet. And, you know, you start to realize, too, that these people are using and operating in other dimensions other than this 5 sense reality that we can see with our limited, you know, human bodies. So that's one of the things when you start finding that out, and then you get into the thing about, you know, as I talked about earlier with the channeling, and you look at Crowley channeling these entities like Lamb that appeared to be this. I mean, it was a gray alien. If you go look up a picture of Lamb, it was a gray alien. I mean, that's, you know, that's what it was. And Crowley was channeling this thing. And then you've got people like, you know, Robert Mueller at the UN, Robert Mueller at the UN, Paradise Earth, his book Paradise Earth. This guy's a known theosophist and a channeler who comes from the Alice Bailey School of Theosophy, which is the one world religion, which is basically a bastardized version of the Madame Helena Blavatsky version that they took the idea of, you know, we're all one, and said, yeah, okay, yeah, we're all one, and we're going to take these Masonic and Eastern philosophies, melt them together in a melting pot. But yeah, we're all one. But of course, that's why we're going to make your new one world religion, Theosophy, led by the UN through the Lucis Trust, because hey, it says right here, we're all one, right? That's why we need a one world government. Ha ha. See, that's not originally what Theosophy was intended to be. Back in the old days, it was intended to be this idea that the full attainment of the human soul in pieces from the ancient hidden knowledge that went back to the original secret societies of Eov, Brotherhood of the Snake, and the Brotherhood of the Serpent. That's what Theosophy was intended to be. It was a group that was trying to bring out the hidden knowledge so that mankind could achieve their greatest gifts. But see, that they got taken. Of course, now it's in the hands of the people. Just, you know, again, coincidentally, in the hands of the people that are setting up world government. And just coincidentally as well, Lee, I'm sure this doesn't mean anything. They have Theosophy temples inside of the UN. I'm sure that doesn't mean anything either. But, you know, the sooner we understand that these people are operating beyond this reality and they're operating in other realities, the sooner that people will start to understand things like ghosts, things like spirits, demons, aliens, extraterrestrial. I saw some people in the chat room talking about the shadow people. You know, these are all, glimpses that we get that go beyond our 5 sense reality that we do not have a context for. We don't have a reference point for it. This is why people get confused, and where there's been this confusion on the reptilian shapeshifter thing. You know, the idea of Bush and Cheney shapeshifting into reptoids sounds ridiculous, but then you look at this ancient Sumerian artifacts, and what you find is that they're not saying people are reptilian shapeshifters. They're saying that there were people that visited here in ancient times that had consciousness the way humans had it, but didn't look like us. They looked like animals. But see, that's been misinterpreted, Lee, on purpose, by design.
Oh, definitely. And another thing that they use is all these phony religions to get people behind these phony religions. And then while we're distracted all these phony religions, they're behind the scenes engaged in all of this crazy stuff. So that's really the name of the game. But anyway, hey, folks, we will be right back. We're going to continue the discussion on all of this on the other side. I'm joined here with Josh Reeves, and you're listening to Oracle Unplugged right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Stay with us, everybody. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You're listening to Oracle Unplugged. My name is Lee Rogers, and I'm joined here with Josh Reeves, the host of the Global Reality Show right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. And Josh, during the break, you mentioned that you wanted to go into some other topics, and, you know, of course, there's no shortage of interesting topics that we could go into. But one of the things that I think has fascinated both of us is the Baghdad Museum and the fact that you had all these artifacts that were at this museum, and then right after the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in the year 2003, immediately you saw all these different ancient artifacts dating back to Mesopotamia, Samaria, Assyria, Babylon, all these societies that used to be in that area thousands and thousands of years ago. well, all of a sudden these artifacts came up missing, and now they're floating around the black market. So, Josh, I mean, what's your thoughts on this whole thing? What does this mean? Are they looking for something with these artifacts? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. They're well, number one, they're not so much looking for something that they think is there, so much was about going after something that they absolutely knew was there. That's what the whole difference here is. And a couple of weeks ago, I went through some research that I'd found and come across where apparently, of course, Saddam Hussein, who considered himself to be the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar,
yes,
was rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace. Now, everybody knows this. It's been talked about. It's been widely reported. But the aspect of this that's widely unreported is the fact that not only was he, of course, rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace, he was also, no one ever mentions this, and that's a big smoking gun to me. You can go pull the mainstream news articles where they talk about, they'll happily say, they'll admit that he said he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. But what they never mention is the fact that Saddam Hussein was also in the process of rebuilding the ancient library. And he was going to rebuild this ancient library and put on display and catalog with all the translations, all of the information pertaining and that came from those cylinder seals, Lee, that came out of Acadia, Samaria, Assyria, and then Babylon. And so he was putting all this information on display, and I don't have all the research in front of me, so I'm going from memory here. But essentially, one of the things that was, make a long story short, was what was found, or allegedly what it said, what it talks about here, is that the people of Iraq, the people of the bloodlines there that are the originator from go back to the original kingdom of Samaria in that land, essentially, were the true Semites, the true God's chosen people. And this information was contained within these cylinder seals that Saddam Hussein was creating this new library for. And he was about to put on display, Lee, right before 9/11. And then, of course, right after it, too, he was working on it all the way up to the invasion, even up to 2002. And he was going to basically put on this display of these ancient tablets from Samaria that were going to say, the Jews aren't God's chosen people. We're the true Semites. And here's the proof. It goes back to ancient Samaria. And, the priest class wasn't going to let that happen. And so what did we have? We had 9/11. Well, then what did we have? Well, then within 30 minutes, we had a boogeyman. They said, oh, no doubt. We're going to be able to trace this back to Osama bin Laden. Then what's the next thing we hear? And we've got 8 months after 9/11, I've got Newsmax.com reports from the Council for National Policy meeting 8 months after 9/11, where they talk about in there, and General Major John Gay Singleton, founding member of the CIA, gave a speech entitled The War on Terrorism. This was the first known use of that term. Of course, but they declassified it. Now it's overseas contingency operations. But
yes,
that's
they
where
changed it, yes.
From. Yeah, they changed it. And so in that is when they said, okay, now we've got to beef up national security. Now that we've got to, if this war on terrorism lasts 100 years, then so be it. And we've got to go after Saddam Hussein. So wait a second. First they told us it was Osama bin Laden. Then next thing you know, 2003, we got to go into Iraq. Wait a second. You told us Iraq didn't have anything to do with 9/11. It was Osama bin Laden. Why are we going in there? Then what's the first thing they do? Well, they blow the doors off the National Museum of Iraq, and they invade his palace and the rest of it. I mean, that was the first thing they did, was they invaded the palaces and the library, the antiquities. And they went and got all of those cylinder seals. Special forces blew the doors off, and they were flown out on C-130s. Now, Lee, that's very interesting. I mean, if you think about it, if he was really going to build this library and prove once and for all who was really the God's chosen people, who were the real Semites, and that would bring the entire religious structure crumbling down overnight.
Absolutely. It certainly would. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church would have some really some tough questions to be answering, and I don't think they'd have any real answers. And another thing that's really interesting to add on to what you were saying about that, Josh, is there were also reports of how the U.S. military were setting up bases at these various archaeological areas, essentially destroying a lot of the work that was done on these various sites. So, it all adds up to really a grand conspiracy in some way, shape, or form. Because, look, we know there's no credible evidence indicating that Saddam Hussein had anything to do with 9/11. It was sold that way. And they just went in there, and there were many reasons for them to go in there. I believe this is one of the main reasons. but it also boils down to control, power, resources. But I think this reason here is very fascinating. It certainly sheds a whole new perspective on why we went into Iraq and what our purpose is for being there. Because we got that $1 billion something embassy there for a reason, and I don't think we're going to be going away anytime soon.
No, most certainly not. And that's the other interesting thing about it is the fact that, when they built up these base camps, they built them on all these archaeological sites. They bulldozed the archaeological sites, as you mentioned, and they also intentionally dug up ground and basically covered it up and just bulldozed over ground that had tablets in the ground. They'd been buried under the ground, and a lot of these tablets got ground up and just ground into the earth, Lee, while they were doing this. So you're going to sit here and tell me this was all an accident? I don't think so. I mean, these people are trying to intentionally bury the truth that could bring everything and their whole establishment down to its foundations. And, another interesting aspect of that is I saw this little YouTube video a couple of weeks ago, and it showed this picture of some special forces guys in front of the ziggurat at Ur of ancient Samaria, and they're pulling this box out, this weird-looking golden box out of this temple, the ziggurat at Ur, and this video talked about how they took it back and they pulled together 30 of the world's best linguists and experts in language to analyze the writing that was on this box, and they told them it was going to be the greatest scientific discovery ever in the whole history of man, and was going to basically challenge everything that we know about who we are, where we came from, and everything else. They brought these linguists in. The linguists translated it. They kicked the linguists out. They promised them they would be, get to break the biggest news, the biggest story to the world. No, they didn't. They used them. They got their knowledge. They kicked them out the door, and nobody knows what happened to this box or who has it or really what it said.
Well, I'd like to know what happened to the linguists. I'm sure they're threatened with death if they revealed any of the information. That's very fascinating. But, we're up against a break, but this is some very interesting information. There's a lot that we are not being told in the corporate controlled press about why we went to Iraq. And, of course, all this stuff about the antiquities and the archaeological sites, the artifacts. It's very fascinating stuff, folks. So anyway, we will be right back, and we'll talk about this more on the other side. You are listening to the Oracle Broadcasting Network. OracleBroadcasting.com is the website. Stay with us, folks. Welcome back to the broadcast. We're thinking Oracle Plug. And Josh, we're having an interesting conversation during the break, and I kind of want to talk about it with everybody else listening. But essentially, we start looking at the fact that you have all these different archaeological discoveries that they're trying to hide. Of course, we were talking about the Rockwall earlier, and then you see what's happening in Iraq. I find it very fascinating because then you look at, well, who would be doing this? And then you look at the Vatican, you look at the Roman Catholic Church, and you see how these guys have this library that contains all these ancient manuscripts. It's very secretive of what is actually in this library. And this is an institution that has been around over 1,500 years, dates back to ancient Rome, is essentially an extension of ancient Rome. And, it makes sense that if there's anybody that would want to hide the true nature of these archaeological findings, it would be the Roman Catholic Church, because they have this congregation of 1 billion plus people who they have under their brainwashing spell. And if any of this information comes out that contradicts all the BS that they've been spewing and filling people's minds with, they'd have some real major problems trying to maintain power and maintain their large congregation. What do you think?
Well, yeah, no question. And that's the whole thing that they're trying to do here. This is about the modern-day priest class that is keeping this ancient information hidden, giving the world this stuff called religion, and basically being that, okay, this is how we keep everything running. But when you look into what they control and how far back they've gone, that old statement, all roads lead to Rome, and they do all lead to Rome. Once you start looking in and finding out that you've got when the Vatican was set up, you had they went after the Templars. You remember that they went after the Templars and basically took what they had. The rest of it fled to Edinburgh, Scotland. It was interesting for me finding out that there was 2 Knights of Malta, that there's the Rome Knights of Malta, and then there's a Masonic Order of the Knights of Malta that are 2 different things. And inside of the Jesuit Knights of Malta oath, if you read it, it talks about, we are sworn to destroy all Protestants and Masons wherever we may find them. It actually says in their oath that we will slit their mothers' throats and tear open their wombs and smash their infants' heads against the walls of the Masons and the Protestants. It literally uses that language in their oath. So you start to see that that when you look into that kind of oath being taken against any group, it doesn't become a stretch when you start thinking about the fact that, people forget that prior to the enemy of communism, people forget what the big enemy and the big outside threat was in this country and throughout the world through the predominant power structure. I bet there aren't too many people in our listening audience, and I'm not meaning to be mean by saying this, but there's not too many people who would know that the big enemy before communism was Protestantism. That was the big enemy. That was the shadowy enemy. In their day, before the commie threat, the threat was Protestantism. They were identifying Protestants throughout the world and identifying them as the enemy and going after them. And so when it became too obvious that that's what they were doing, they changed the threat to communism. And it was essentially arms and extensions of the same thing. And they usually used, the Rothschilds and the Zionists and that whole bloodline and the Jews as their front men. They put them out in front, made it believe that they had the perceived power. Meanwhile, these guys are in the back room pulling the puppet strings, and they're where the real power is. That's what the whole thing is. Everybody talks about the Jews and the Jesuits. These people are all in this together, Lee.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And my research has concluded that is certainly the case. And, it's kind of funny because when you start looking back in like the 1500s and you see how Pope Paul IV, I was doing some research for my film on this, but Pope Paul IV, this is the guy that actually began this whole Jewish ghetto system. Okay, this is the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, and they did that for a few hundred years. So then you fast forward to the 1700s, and then you see the Rothschild family, and then this guy, Mayer Amschel Bauer, that was his real name, he all of a sudden changes it to Rothschild, which means red shield. And then you look at what red shield refers to. Well, it's interesting because then you look at Roman soldiers, how they had red shields. Interesting coincidence there. So, there's a lot of information, evidence to indicate that the Rothschild family were essentially just put out there in front to be frontmen treasurers for the Vatican. I know you came across some research, Josh, with the Encyclopedia Judaica. I have not had a chance to look at this in black and white. I'm planning on going to a library to be 100% sure, but I've seen a lot of links and references to this online. But essentially, according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, according to the research of people who've looked into this, is that the name Rothschild means something like treasure, or like the Vatican's treasure, or guardian of the Vatican's treasure, I think is the exact terminology. So, you can't ignore all these links.
No, and you know what? I did look into that further, and I did find some things that I'd like to clarify on that. It was the fact that it because I had some arguments with people in the chat room about this. It wasn't that it says, maybe I misspoke when I first put this information out. I probably did, but if I did, I apologize. But it's not that the name means Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. It means Rothschild Red Shield. That's where the Bauer name changed over to. Allegedly, when one of them owned a shop and he looked up and saw a red shield and said, "I'm going to change my name to Red Shield." That's their cover story. No, you're exactly right. It's because the Romans had red shields. But so apparently, when you look it up in the Encyclopedia Judaica, under the description of Rothschild, I found several versions of the Encyclopedia Judaica online. I couldn't find one that had that reference in it, but from what I understand, there's a lot of different versions. But it basically describes them. It says Rothschilds, blah, blah, blah. And it's basically, if you look at one of these things, it really is the encyclopedia of everything Jewish. It's I don't know who compiled this thing. And it seems strange to me because there's not a encyclopedia of African Americans or an encyclopedia of Anglo-Saxons, but they have the Encyclopedia Judaica. And it really is, if you never looked at one, it is all things Jewish.
Yeah, it's like 26 volumes or something, 26 volumes long.
And it's ridiculous, the detail, Lee, that they go into describing any and all connections to Judaism into people who are Jewish. And so when you look up the Rothschilds, that's what it says. It talks about how they're connected to Judaism, and then says guardians of the Vatican treasury.
Well, that's even more interesting, I think, if it's a description describing Rothschild, because if it doesn't directly mean that it's the guardians of the Vatican treasury, the fact that it's a description of them, I think, is just as damning.
Yeah, if not more, because, I mean, this is basically them explaining as if, that's the whole thing. When you think about why it would say guardians of the Vatican treasury, to me, you get the impression that among people in the know, specifically in the likes of Judaism and people who speak Hebrew, you get the idea that almost the intercorrelations between their faith and what their religious hierarchy pushes and what they follow is known fact that it's intermingled with the Vatican and with Catholicism. It's almost like it's an inside joke, almost like they're saying, yeah, guardians of the Vatican treasury. You reading this will know that the Catholic Church, Judaism is just an extension of the Catholic Church. I mean, it really does almost seem like an inside thing, doesn't it, Lee?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these people, this is what they do. A lot of what they put out there in the corporate control media, what's put out there in the educational system, and its false view of reality that they put out there, it's really meant to be an inside joke. A lot of the stuff that you see, when you start digging into what's really going on, then you start looking at the corporate control media again, and it almost looks like this fantasy version of reality. It's like a movie version that they put out there for all the people. And it's like a spell. It's like a brainwashing spell that they put out there to get people distracted and not to really look deeper into what's going on. And unfortunately, they've been very effective at it.
Well, they've been extremely effective at it. We're coming on a break again, I know, here in just a minute, Lee, but when we come back from the break, we were talking about some other stuff on the last break. I'd like to talk about the new Dan Brown prequels, Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons on the other side.
Yes, that'd be an interesting subject because that film's going to be coming out. And I guess what we'll do is we'll wait till after the break to get into it. But yeah, essentially the new film Angels and Demons, I've seen the trailers for it. You got the Illuminati in there, and apparently the Vatican and their sworn enemy, the Illuminati, are going at each other. And of course, we know that's just a bunch of crap and nonsense. But we'll get into that on the other side, I promise. You're listening to Oracle Unplugged. I'm joined here with Josh Reeves, the host of the Global Reality Show. And folks, we will be right back. Stay with us. All right, final half hour of Oracle Unplugged. Thank you for joining me tonight. And my name is Lee Rogers. I'm the host of the Live Free or Die radio show, which airs every night, Monday through Friday, right here in this network from 9 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time. I'm joined here with Josh Reeves, the host of the Global Reality Show. His show airs from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And definitely the best 4-hour radio show anywhere out there as far as I'm concerned. So definitely make sure you check it out. And Josh, before the break, you mentioned that you want to talk about this new film that's coming out called Angels and Demons. And essentially you got the Vatican in this film, you got the Illuminati, and apparently the Illuminati, they're the sworn enemies of the Vatican, which we know is a bunch of crap. We know that this is just propaganda being put out. But you know a lot more about the synopsis of this film, so I'll let you run with this and explain to the audience what this film is all about and kind of what the whole purpose of this film being put out is.
Well, and it's funny, he did the second book first as far as the movies are concerned when he put out the Da Vinci Code, and everybody bought up and lapped it up like it was interesting stuff. Well, and then all the news reports, well, it's not really true. It's fictionalized, but it's interesting. Well, no, they both get it wrong. You've got the propaganda from the movie, then you've got the propaganda the media puts out, and you don't get the truth from either one of them. So the fact of the matter is that these are all puff pieces that in no doubt in my mind are being funded whole cloth by the Vatican. Dan Brown is a fully owned subsidiary of the Vatican Church and answers directly to the general of the Society of Jesus. We all know who he is, but the fact of the matter is that when you look at they chose for this Tom Hanks, they chose Tom Hanks this role. You go back and you even look at the work that CBS News and Ancestry.com has reported on these bloodline connections with Barack Obama, Dick Cheney, Bush, Vlad the Impaler, Dracula himself. These are some ones they report on. We know more than that. But, of course, the time Marilyn Monroe and Princess Diana. And then, of course, the celebrities as well who were tied into that bloodline. People like Justin Timberlake, Brad Pitt, and, of course, Tom Hanks. So when you look at these bloodlines and these bloodlines trace back all the way through Rome, all the way to the kingdom of Ramses II, and you understand what they were doing. Hell, the Egyptians were telling the slaves that the sun was God. Meanwhile, they were in the temples worshiping the tripantheon of gods, Isis, Osiris, and Horus. And Horus, of course, is Lucifer. That's where all this worship of Sirius comes from and how it relates. As people understand, Lucifer is not the guy in the red PJs, folks. That's a different appellation. That's the devil incarnate. That's the term they gave to anybody that got close to the information that Yah was putting out. They banished him to reincarnate here in these bodies and then gave him this title of the Prince of Darkness. That's the guy in the red PJs. Lucifer relates to Sirius. It's the consort, and it's the long, I can't remember what you call it. It's the right angle, not the right angle, but the top, whatever the top is, of the Pythagorean theorem. The tripantheon, the Trinity, is represented in the Pythagorean theorem, the 87th problem of Euclid or something like that. But angels and demons, you have this thing where the Illuminati are the bad guy. Let's just put that out here first. First off, the Illuminati are the bad guy. So you have protagonists, you have antagonists. That's a standard formula for any movie. Then you have the hero, and the hero in this case being Tom Hanks. And of course, I think that's an interesting tie-in because the hero or the animus, the father figure, always relates to the sun deity. So that tells us probably at some point in one of these subsequent films or books, the character of Tom Hanks is going to die. Now, do I know that as an absolute fact? No, but I'm throwing it out there and saying watch, because if it is what I think it is, that at some point his character is going to be killed in one of these books and movies later on because he's representing the sun figure. Then you have the good guy. You have the protagonist, and the protagonist is could be seen as the government, if you want to look at it in that fashion. It's the it's the Vatican, and that's who the Vatican is portrayed as. They're portrayed as the good guy, the protagonist, which is interesting. That alone, to me, should describe the entire film. You have the Vatican being portrayed as the good guy. Hello, folks, and then who's the bad guy? Who's the antagonist? Well, that would be this shadowy group, the Illuminati. And what do they want to do? Well, the Illuminati are sworn and hell-bent on destroying the Vatican so they can destroy religions. So the secret group, the Illuminati, goes and steals an antimatter bomb from none other than the CERN facility, the atom smasher that everybody was talking about was going to open up black holes and all these micro black holes that you wouldn't see because they're too small to even be analyzed. You wouldn't start to see them appear until 2012. That was reported on by a major astrophysicist out of England who said, even if it did produce these things, you wouldn't know about it until right around the neighborhood of 2012. So, again, they fictionalize the truth, so the truth seems like fiction, but they also fictionalize the truth and flip it around to fit their agenda. And, I mean, it's all a psychological operation so that people believe that the Vatican are always there. I mean, you always see these things where the Knights Templar are always supposed to be portrayed to be all these loving heroes and these saviors of humanity. I mean, it's ridiculous, Lee, to look at this. And again, the Vatican being the good guy, I think is the red flag number one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you actually look at the history of the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, and you start to look at all the blood that is on their hands, it's just unbelievable. You can look at all these people they persecuted in the name of Christianity, and it's just mind-boggling. All the Inquisitions, you got the Crusades. I mean, the Crusades were a bloodbath. So this is the type of organization that you're dealing with, and some of the torture methods that were employed against people who are non-believers. I mean, there's a reason why they persecuted people who didn't believe in their phony religion, because they didn't want people looking into all this other stuff that they were secretly involved in behind the scenes. And it's really just a sorry state of affairs when you start looking to the history of the Roman Catholic Church.
No, there's no question. That's the whole thing is, again, this idea of the shadowy enemy. And I've talked about this over the past several weeks. So, about a month or so ago, I had this epiphany. I was just going to lay in bed one night. And it sort of dawned on me, I sort of had the mainstream media TV going on as I was going to sleep. And it dawned on me for a second. I heard them boogeymanning Al-Qaeda or some new Bin Laden tape or something. I don't know what it was. It all was together. But they were boogeymanning something, new Al-Qaeda threat. And as I was laying there, I started thinking, you know what? They've sort of done this same thing to us with the Patriot movement, the whole Patriot Bow movement, as you call it, Lee, and the rest of it, as I like to refer to it as. But, they've sort of have gotten us chasing another shadowy enemy. The people that saw through the paradigm of, the boogeyman Al-Qaeda or boogeyman communism or any of the rest of this stuff, and the people who figured out, and at least not really, maybe not figured out completely, but got a glimpse at what real reality is versus the reality they're being sold. So they, as we've talked about, they have this new paradigm waiting on them. But also, what they do is it becomes this thing where you're chasing another shadowy enemy. Now you're chasing the New World Order. Now you're chasing the Illuminati. Now you're chasing the Freemasons. Now you're chasing the Jews. Now you're chasing the Jesuits. Now you're chasing the Vatican. But who are these people? That's the whole thing. I mean, we can sit around all day long and talk about that, we fight the Illuminati or fight the New World Order or any of this stuff. But who are these people? We got to start putting names and faces to these people so we can identify who these criminals are, Lee. And it seems to me, and definitely with some of the research we've come into with the new film, The Secret Right, I think we have a case for this. It certainly seems to me that the whole point of the Patriot movement and that type of thing being started was to keep people from ever finding out who and putting a face and a name to these people and just keeping you chasing these shadowy enemies. Because, of course, when you look into it, the people that had a vested interest in that are involved. From Knights of Malta to the rest of the Jesuits and to the JBS, Lee.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And, it took me over a year to finally come to this conclusion. It really, I don't get any satisfaction actually having to come out and make these type of statements. I've talked about this on my show, but I mean, the facts are just right there. I mean, you can't dispute the information that's here. First of all, you got all these people who are members of the Council for National Policy floating around these various patriot groups. You have this rampant obsession with the Jews, and if you research into that, you start to understand, well, it is just the Jews. I mean, what do these people have all in common? And when you start looking at what all these people have in common, they all are into these ancient mystery religions. So what we're dealing with here is the priest class of old, and they take on all these different forms. They join all these different groups, and they use this as a method to distract people from what's really going on and to divide people as to, who's actually behind this? But it's really all these groups of people that have these different subgroups, and they're all trying to move forward with this great agenda. Some call it the Great Work or the New World Order or whatever you want to call it. The point is, it's going to be tyranny on Earth. It's going to be an enslavement system, and that's really what they're trying to build through their so-called Great Work.
No, there's no question. That's exactly what it is. And when you start to find out that, when you start identifying these people get real mad when you start putting a name to a face to it, Lee. And I just don't know how we're ever going to affect change if we don't identify who it is we're up against.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And unfortunately, we're up against a break. We got one more segment here. This is Oracle Unplugged. And this is the Oracle Broadcasting Network. OracleBroadcasting.com is the website. And folks, I'll be right back with Josh Reeves to finish this up. Stay with us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, final segment of Oracle Unplugged. And Josh, we were talking about some interesting things during the break, and I figured we continue the discussion on this. But, we're talking about religion, we're talking about the priest class, and then we started getting involved talking about our two films. And, of course, you're making this movie on the Council for National Policy, the Secret Right, and getting to religion and some of the various different things, how it pertains to the Patriot movement and so on and so forth. And it's interesting because the research that you've done on your film, the research that I'm doing on my film, The History of Money, we're seeing some correlations and some of our research intersecting. And it was kind of interesting because one of the things that you brought up was the silver manipulation back during the early 1980s. Now, you had the Hunts that were involved in this, and they were, of course, heavily involved in the Council for National Policy, still are, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And you see this massive manipulation in the silver market. Now, this was at a time in which there was a lot of inflation. There was concerns that the dollar was going to collapse. We're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. And you saw this parabolic rise in the price of silver like we've never seen in modern-day history. So you had silver top out around $50 an ounce, and then it just crashed. And it went down to like around $3 or $4 an ounce at the low point. And my personal belief on this is that the Hunts, they got billions and billions of dollars. They intentionally engineered this rise in the price of silver, having this public story they're going to corner the silver market. And then I think they probably want to bankrupt people who are heavily investing in silver because of all the concerns with inflation. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true, but it certainly fits the modus operandi.
No, there's no question. And of course, yeah, the Hunt, their father, H.L. Hunt, was We actually went and shot footage at his at their estate, which is an exact replication of Mount Vernon that Washington lived in. That's a very interesting correlation between the bloodlines and the Masonic stuff. But they essentially they gave Tim LaHaye the startup money for the Council for National Policy. They were also the predominant funder of the John Birch Society as well, the Council for National Policy, and also the National Center for Ethnology and Eugenics, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. So when you start to find out that they basically got where they were by cutthroating their competition, they basically took the Rockefeller Standard Oil approach to dealing with competition, which was competition. What competition? We're going to buy you our competition. That's what John D. Rockefeller would do. He would go down to this competition. He would literally show up on their doorstep. They'd go, "Oh my God, John D. Rockefeller's here," and he'd go, "Boys, here's what's going to go down. I've got the cash right now. I'll give you double what your company's worth, or we can do this the hard way, and I can just bankrupt you, and I'll own you either way. What's it going to be?" And they just take the money. He eliminated the competition by going in and just going, "I got a big bucket of money here. Who wants it?" And everybody took it. Well, that's exactly what the Hunts were doing, and that's how they became the most wealthiest Texas oil business. They bought up all the poor people in East Texas, all the poor people. I mean, I've heard stories. I grew up in Texas my whole life, so I knew people that had family, that the Hunts came along and bought them out. That's exactly what they did. They bought up their competition. So what I'm thinking is, and I remember being a kid, oil was a hot commodity and a big thing here in the Dallas area. Lots of big oil traders here during that time,
yes.
Late 70s, early 80s. And essentially what I think was going on, Lee, is they were trying to, I think a lot of these fellow oil guys, I think basically what they did is they put out the rumor that silver was about to get hot. And I think they had a bunch of these guys who they knew who had big money in oil. And of course, in 76, you had Bush's Arbustar oil that went bust, and that was a whole sham as well. So I think what they did was, from the information I've looked at, they put out this information that silver was about to get hot. Everybody bought it up. They went through the roof. They were buying it in droves. And then boom, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. They get to change the exchange rules. In exchange for that, and for the Hunts' participation and losing their $1 billion, they get all of their oil, competition eliminated, and they lose big money, but because they invested in the silver as well. I mean, I don't think there's any question that that's how they attained a lot of their power. And I bet you anything, Ross Perot and Louis Lehrman and some of these other guys that have been big into oil and big into metals were probably involved in it too.
Well, yeah, they were talking about how they were still invested in gold and silver. I mean, that clip, I got to dig up that clip, but I know you have it. The clip in which they're talking about the silver market, and then you have that other one where Louis Lehrman.
Yeah. I can play right now.
Yeah, in fact, let's see if we can do that. Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know when you got loaded up. Yeah, because here it is.
The legendary Texas oil billionaire H.L. Hunt decided the chronic shortage of silver made it a good investment. So they started buying, slowly enough at first that the price rose only gradually. But last year, as the Hunts bought more and more, the price skyrocketed, soaring from $9 an ounce to $52 an ounce, an increase of 580% in just 6 months. That made silver as an investment even better than gold, but it also drove up the cost of products containing silver, causing a record rise in wholesale prices. According to James Stone, chairman of the government's Commodities Futures Trading Commission, a lot of people were hurt.
The silver-related industries laid a lot of people off. There were more than 5,000 people who lost their jobs and all of that.
Some users are still pinched at today's level.
There's no possibility of keeping up to it. In 1 week alone, it went up and down almost $48. And it's you can't do that. It's no way to run a business.
But the people who run the silver exchanges in Chicago and New York were mainly afraid that the Hunts would accumulate so much of the available silver that they could set any price they wanted. So they changed the trading rules several times until the Hunts were forced to sell and almost nobody else was allowed to buy.
To put it in the terms of a football analogy, the game starts, the rules are changed, and finally when you get to the last quarter, the referee says only the other side can have the ball.
That drove the price down and cost the Hunts more than $1 billion. And nobody knows how much was lost by small investors who jumped on the Hunt silver bandwagon. In recent weeks, as silver staged a comeback from $16 an ounce to $21, the market has been fueled by rumors that the Hunts are buying again.
All right, so we'll stop right there. But no, that's very, very interesting. That was actually with the oldest Hunt brother there talking. I think it's I can't remember his name. But yeah, you start to see. I mean, they totally manipulated that market. And I mean, think again, who benefits? Follow the money. And we've got two people, both the exchange and the people involved in the metals, and the people that would want their competition wiped out here. So where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a really damaging clip. I mean, because I forgot exactly what the contents of that clip were, and considering what we were discussing before, and then you play that, I mean, geez, I mean, what else can you say? And you know what's interesting? I don't know if you've ever seen Aaron Russo's movie Trading Places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, essentially, in that movie, you have the manipulation of the frozen concentrated orange juice market. You know, it's kind of like a playoff or kind of like a spin on what happened with the silver market manipulation. So definitely check out that film because it's kind of like just kind of like showing you, okay, well, this is what happened, but in a way, here's what's going on, and it's put in the format of the movie. That's the one with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. It's kind of an interesting take on it.
Remember when they're at the World Trade Center at the end of it, Lee?
Yeah, the
final scenes at the World Trade Center. Yeah,
I remember. It was interesting. They're like in some sort of. You had Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, and they eventually bankrupt the two old men that were involved in making that bet and all this other crazy stuff. You just have to see the film, but it's interesting.
The whole final scene, they get out of the car and they look up and there's the World Trade Center. And then they go inside and they go up the elevator. I think who was it? Who was it that had the costume on? Lee, remember that? Was
the guy with the gorilla? Yeah, with the gorilla, and then the guy gets stuck with the real gorilla, and the gorilla's trying to mate with him. Yeah. He gets locked in the
man, I wish I had that. I'd love to watch that right now. That's hilarious.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, a crazy film. But Josh, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. It's been a great show. Do you have any final thoughts on the CMP or your film or anything else?
Yeah, final thought is the same final thought it always is, which is do your own homework. Do your own research. Don't rely on a host, a filmmaker, or anything else to have your knowledge in their hands, because if you do, it's no different than the Vatican, the New World Order, or anybody else having your knowledge in their hands. But hey, Justin.tv/Global Reality Show. I'll be showing something, or /Global Reality, showing something after this. So Lee, it was fun, man.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been an interesting show, and we definitely have to do this more often. I think you're going to be on my show when The Secret Right comes out for a few times. And yes. We're definitely going to blow the lid again on the Council of National Policy, because there's a lot of people out there that simply refuse to believe any of the stuff they're putting out. Hey, Josh, thanks for coming on. It's been a great show. And folks, check out my website. Check out logovernment.com. Also check out blacklistnews.com. And this has been oraclebroadcasting.com, the official website of the radio network. And that's it for the show. Have a good night, everybody. Take it easy.